my name's Sydnie Christmas.
Is it?
Sydnie
Yeah.
That's an unbelievable name. I love that.
It's terrible, isn't it?
What Britain's Got Talent didn't tell you about Sydnie Christmas goes well beyond her stunning performances that captivated millions. While viewers witnessed her becoming the first solo female singer to win the show in 2024 with an impressive 27.2% of the public vote, few knew about her struggle before stepping onto that stage. However, her journey to stardom wasn't as straightforward as the show portrayed. Despite facing controversy about her professional background, we'll uncover the full story behind Britain's Got Talent's latest champion that producers never revealed. Come along. From Kent to the stage, Sydnie's early life. Growing up in the cozy little town of Gravesend in Kent, Sydnie Christmas was that girl who always seemed to have a little spark in her eye, a sort of shine that hinted she was destined for something big, even if no one could quite put their finger on it at the time. You know how some kids are just born with a bit of flair? Well, that was Sydnie. Long before she stood on the glittering stage of Britain's Got Talent and received that unforgettable golden buzzer moment that made the nation stop and stare, she was just a regular girl with a voice that honestly couldn't stay hidden. Her childhood home, tucked into the quiet corners of Kent, often echoed with the sound of her singing. Whether it was a Broadway number, a Disney classic, or something she made up on the spot. And really, is there anything more charming than a kid turning the living room into a stage? Everyone saw her sing, but did you catch what happened after the cameras stopped rolling? Why did the judges look nervous during her performance? And what's the one thing about Sydnie Christmas that the show strangely left out? Stick around, because once you hear what really happened behind the scenes, you'll never watch talent shows the same way again. From a young age, Sydnie was that girl at community events, you know, the one who would stand up confidently in front of a crowd, no matter how small or big, and just sing, like full-on, from the gut, goosebumps kind of singing. It wasn't about showing off. It was just in her. And what's funny is, even though Gravesend isn't exactly the epicenter of showbiz, the town kind of nurtured her in its own quiet way. Local events, school productions, talent nights, you name it, Sydnie was there. And she didn't just participate, she lit up the room. Her teachers saw it. Her classmates saw it. Heck, even the janitor probably knew this girl was special. Everyone kept saying, "You've got something." And rather than letting that praise get to her head, she just kept working. Now here's where it gets even better. She didn't just stop at singing in front of family and friends. Sydnie, even as a teenager, had this drive. You know, that kind of determination that doesn't take maybe later for an answer? That was her. While other kids were busy with weekend sleepovers or hanging at the mall, Sydnie was out there grinding, joining every school play, volunteering for every solo, taking every chance she could to perform. And let's be honest, how many of us, as teens, had that kind of focus? She wanted it, not for the fame or the glamour, but because the stage made her feel alive. Like, really alive. Of course, raw talent can only get you so far. And Sydnie knew that. That's when she made the leap to the D&B Academy of Performing Arts, a move that would change everything. Imagine being surrounded by a room full of the most talented, passionate, and driven young performers, all fighting for the same dream. That's intense, right? But Sydnie didn't shrink in that environment. She thrived. The D&B Academy wasn't just some regular school where you sing a few notes and go home. No, it was full-on, sweat on the dance floor, vocal drills till you drop kind of training. Sydnie learned discipline. She got pushed. She learned how to tell a story not just with her voice, but with her body, her expressions, and even her silence. Have you ever seen someone sing a song and make you cry without even hitting the high note yet? That's the kind of artistry she was developing. And don't get it twisted, those years at D&B weren't a walk in the park. There were days she probably wanted to throw in the towel, days when her voice cracked, when choreography just wouldn't stick, when nothing seemed to be going right. But she kept going, because that's who she is. She wasn't just chasing a dream, she was building a future, one sweat-drenched rehearsal at a time. Then came the moment that really shifted everything. Lazarus. Yeah, that Lazarus. The one co-written by David Bowie. Can you imagine that? One day, you're belting show tunes in a Kent living room, and the next, you're cast in a groundbreaking West End production tied to a literal music legend. That's the stuff of dreams. But here's the thing. Sydnie didn't just get lucky. She earned that role. She walked into that audition room with all the fire and finesse she'd built up over the years, and she made them see her. Performing in Lazarus at the King's Cross Theatre wasn't just a resume boost, it was a rite of passage. She was now sharing a stage with seasoned professionals, soaking up experience, building relationships, learning the kind of on-the-job lessons no classroom could ever teach. And do you know what's even more incredible? She held her own. This wasn't just some background chorus gig. This was a role that required vulnerability, presence, and power. And she brought all of it. She stepped into that theater as a student of performing arts and walked out a full-fledged artist. Looking back, it all kind of makes sense, doesn't it? From those early days in Gravesend to the polished performances in London's West End, every step of Sydnie's journey feels like it was meant to be. But it wasn't handed to her. It wasn't overnight. It was countless small moments of bravery, singing when no one asked, auditioning when she was scared, staying up late to perfect a note, walking into new spaces where she had to prove herself all over again. And honestly, isn't that what makes her story so powerful? It's not just about talent. It's about grit. It's about showing up again and again and again, even when no one's clapping yet. Sydnie Christmas is the kind of artist who reminds us that dreams aren't made in an instant. They're built over years, through sweat, setbacks, and sheer love for the craft. So yes, by the time she stepped onto that Britain's Got Talent stage, her voice wasn't just coming from her lungs. It was coming from a lifetime of hard work, a little town called Gravesend, and a heart that never gave up. The hidden years before BGT. So here's the thing about Sydnie Christmas that most people didn't see on TV. There's this whole chunk of her life, a whole era, really, where she was hustling her heart out, pouring every bit of herself into performing, and doing it all while juggling the kind of everyday struggles that so many of us know too well. You know how sometimes we only see the glitz and glamour when someone finally gets their big break? Yes, well, there was a lot of grit before the glitter in Sydnie's story. Between her debut on the West End and her dazzling rise to fame on Britain's Got Talent, Sydnie was building a career that didn't make headlines. But it was real, it was raw, and it was full of those behind-the-scenes moments that shaped her into the powerhouse we eventually saw. Let's rewind a bit. After making waves in the David Bowie musical Lazarus, which, let's be honest, is already super cool, Sydnie didn't just sit around waiting for the next big gig. Nope, she packed her bags and hit the high seas. Literally. She took her talents to the world stage, on cruise ships, Royal Caribbean to be exact. Ever been on one of those ships? They're like floating cities. And in those cities, Sydnie became a star of her own kind. She performed in full-on productions like Grease, Yes, the Grease, and played none other than Rizzo. Can we pause and appreciate that for a second? Rizzo, with all her sass and soul. Sydnie belted out classics like "There Are Worse Things I Could Do," night after night, sailing from port to port, bringing Broadway-level energy to vacationing audiences from all over the globe. She also lit up the stage in The Muse, Star Water, a completely different vibe where she played the youngest Muse. It was dreamy, abstract, and let her flex a different set of performance muscles. That cruise ship chapter wasn't just a job, it was a training ground. It gave her the chance to see the world, sharpen her craft, and soak in all kinds of inspiration. And then, just like that, her journey took her to Germany, Bochum, to be exact. Ever heard of it? It's a quiet city, but in the world of musical theater, it's home to a beast of a show, Starlight Express. And that's where Sydnie spent the next 4 years of her life. 4 years. Not as the leading lady, not with her name in flashing lights, at least not at first. She started off as a swing performer. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, think of it like this. She had to learn multiple roles, remember every single cue, be ready to jump in at a moment's notice, sometimes with zero warning. One night, she could be playing one ensemble part, the next night, a completely different character. No two shows were ever the same for her. Can you even imagine the mental gymnastics that takes? But you know what? She didn't just survive it, she grew. She climbed the ranks. Over time, Sydnie landed named roles like Belle the Bar Car and Carrie the Luggage Car. Those parts gave her a chance to truly own the stage, show off her range, and prove, to herself if no one else, that she was more than just a standby. It's wild to think that all of this, those years of sweat, sore feet, missed holidays, and sheer emotional stamina, was unfolding far from the eyes of the British public. While people at home had no idea who she was yet, Sydnie was out there building a resume most performers would envy. But still, the West End dream? It kept slipping through her fingers. So she came back to London with her boyfriend, probably hoping that all that international experience would finally open some doors. But London's theater world? Brutal. No matter how much talent she had, it always seemed like she was just one no away from giving up entirely. And those auditions, one after another, rejection after rejection. It wears on you. It's the kind of thing that makes you question everything. Am I good enough? Do I even belong here anymore? Meanwhile, real life kept moving. Her friends were getting married, having babies, buying houses, and there she was, working the front desk at a gym on a 0-hour contract, trying to scrape together rent and still make it to auditions. That's not the glamorous performer life people imagine, is it? But it's the real, unfiltered part of chasing a dream. Eventually, she hit that point. You know, the one where you're just done, where you tell yourself, okay, this is it, one last shot. If this doesn't work out, maybe it's time to let it go. And that's when Britain's Got Talent came into the picture. Not because she was desperate for fame, but because she was desperate to be heard, to be seen, to be understood. It wasn't just a TV competition to her, it was her last Hail Mary, her final attempt to make the dream real. And the rest, well, you already know. The audience fell in love with her. The judges couldn't look away. But now that you know what came before, don't her performances just mean more? All those years at sea, the relentless German winters, the gym shifts, the tears after rejections, every bit of it added something to her voice, her presence, her story. And maybe that's why she resonates with so many people. Because she didn't just show up on stage with talent. She showed up with life, with lived experience, with every bruise and breakthrough etched into every note she sang. Funny how the world finally caught on, huh? But for Sydnie, that spotlight was earned long before the cameras started rolling. Was Sydnie Christmas just another singer with a big voice? Or was something much deeper going on behind that golden buzzer moment? Why did the audience react so strongly? And what did the producers conveniently leave on the cutting room floor? You'll want to stay with us till the end, because the truth is more surprising than her high notes. What Britain's Got Talent didn't show. What we all saw on Britain's Got Talent about Sydnie Christmas, that goosebump-raising moment when she sang Tomorrow from Annie, was just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, she absolutely owned that stage, right? But what most people didn't see, what the cameras didn't quite capture, was the mountain of emotion, the years of quiet heartbreak, the empty bank account, and the endless rehearsals that led to that one golden moment. If you thought her performance made you cry, wait until you hear what she went through before even stepping on that stage. Let's rewind a bit. Before the glitz of the BGT stage, before the judges' standing ovation, before Amanda Holden's jaw literally dropped, Sydnie was, in her own words, at rock bottom. And this wasn't the kind of rock bottom people throw around casually when they're having a bad week. No, this was full-blown life crisis mode. She was 29, barely scraping by in London, which, as anyone who's ever lived there knows, feels like trying to keep warm in a snowstorm with a paper towel. Rent was suffocating, gigs were scarce, and her dream of being on the West End? It felt like it was slowly dying a quiet, painful death. Rejection after rejection chipped away at her spirit. Imagine pouring your entire soul into something, only to be told over and over again, not this time. How many no's can a person take before they start to believe they're not good enough? And that's where Sydnie was, standing at this internal cliff, staring down, asking herself, is it even worth it anymore? Can you imagine what that feels like? To love something so deeply, singing, performing, dreaming, and to feel like the door keeps slamming shut right in your face? It's not just exhausting, it's heartbreaking. So when she applied for Britain's Got Talent, it wasn't just for the fame or the exposure. It wasn't even just about the prize money, although, let's be honest, that would have helped. It was about one last shot. One, as in, if this doesn't work, maybe I'll just give it all up. She described it as her final attempt, and you could almost hear the exhaustion and desperation in that phrase. But also, there was a flicker of hope, too. That little voice saying, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the moment. And then enters Annabelle Williams. Now, if you don't know who Annabelle is, she's that vocal coach. The kind who can spot a diamond buried under all the pressure and polish it until it shines so bright you can't look away. She's worked with major names like Sam Smith and James Arthur, so you know she doesn't play around. But with Sydnie, this wasn't just some client-coach dynamic. This was deeper. Annabelle saw something in Sydnie. She saw past the nerves, past the fear, and into the fire that was still burning inside her no matter how dim it had gotten. Together, they didn't just work on hitting high notes or controlling breath, though yes, Sydnie's vocal control, insane. They dug into the emotion behind every word. They asked, why are you singing this song? What does it mean to you? What do you want the audience to feel when you sing The Sun'll Come Out Tomorrow? And let's be honest, when Sydnie performed, you felt it. You could hear her story in every note. You could hear every closed door, every silent cry, every little girl who dared to dream and refused to give up. That kind of vulnerability, that's not something you can fake. That's something you grow into when someone like Annabelle helps you believe in yourself again. And here's another thing people often forget. Having talent is one thing, but having someone in your corner, that changes everything. Annabelle wasn't just a coach. She was a lifeline. In those moments where Sydnie probably questioned whether she even had the right to chase her dreams anymore, Annabelle was that gentle but firm voice saying, "Yes, you do, and you're not alone." So when Sydnie walked onto that stage, she wasn't just a hopeful contestant. She was a woman who had fought tooth and nail to get there. She carried every sleepless night, every unpaid bill, every whispered doubt with her. And when she opened her mouth to sing, she poured all of that into the music. That's what made it so powerful. That's why the judges looked like they were about to cry. Because what we heard wasn't just a song. It was a soul refusing to be silenced. And seriously, how many of us have had that one dream that feels so close, yet so impossibly far? That dream you chase even when everything around you screams, "Let it go!" Sydnie's story is that dream personified. And her performance? It was a quiet scream to the world. I'm still here. I still believe. And I'm not giving up. Why did Sydnie Christmas almost not make it on stage? What's the one secret she kept even from the judges? And how did the editing team make sure you only saw what they wanted you to see? If you think you know her story, think again. The real drama starts after the performance. And trust me, you don't want to miss the ending. Support from her boyfriend, Max Rizzo. If you think Sydnie Christmas's moment on Britain's Got Talent was just another flashy performance with a sparkly golden buzzer, oh no, there's way more to the story than what made it to the screen. Like, let's sit down and unravel what was really going on behind all that glitter and applause. This isn't just a cute rags to riches type of thing. They lived it. And at the heart of it all was Max Rizzo, her partner, her rock, her real-life cheerleader. How many people can say they've stood by someone through the thickest thick and thinnest thin? Max did. And not in a half-hearted, "Oh, I believe in you, babe," kind of way, but in a roll-up-your-sleeves, ride or die. We're in this together even if we're broke and exhausted kind of way. So here's the scoop. Sydnie and Max weren't just some cute showbiz couple who met on Instagram or something. Nah, they met while doing Starlight Express in Germany. Yeah, that's right. Full-blown stage lights, roller skates, and international vibes. They were out there grinding together, living that musical theater life. And when you work in that industry, you know it's not all jazz hands and curtain calls. It's back pain, voice cracks, rejections that cut deep, and paychecks that sometimes feel like a joke. But even with all that, they were building something, both as performers and as partners. That shared hustle, it really bonded them. I mean, can you imagine the kind of connection you build with someone when you're both chasing the same dream and fighting the same uphill battle? And let me tell you, Max wasn't just clapping from the sidelines. He was in the trenches with her. When gigs were scarce and the money wasn't flowing, when it felt like the world wasn't paying attention, he still saw her talent like it was shining in neon lights. That kind of support is rare. Like, how many people will hold your hand when the world is looking the other way? When you're auditioning for roles and getting turned down left and right? When rent is due and neither of you has booked anything in months? He stood firm. He believed in her when it was probably easier to give up. And that kind of faith? That's what keeps a dream alive when everything else is screaming, "Give it up." Now, let's talk about what we didn't see on that BGT stage. You know how confident Sydnie looked when she came out and sang her heart out? Yeah, that kind of poise doesn't come easy. Behind that controlled voice and powerful presence was a woman who was literally shaking in her boots. She said it herself, "I was shaking like a leaf." And isn't that interesting? Because on TV, she looked like she'd done this a million times. But backstage, just minutes before walking out, she was battling a whole storm of nerves. That tells you everything you need to know about her strength. Not just her voice, but her courage. And let's not forget the preparation that went into that moment. That one audition, it wasn't just an audition. It was the product of years of blood, sweat, and heartbreak. You think she just rolled out of bed and sang like that? No way. She worked for that moment. She trained. She pushed through setbacks. She probably cried in dressing rooms and doubted herself more times than we could ever count. But she still showed up. Again and again, rejection after rejection. That audition was just the tip of the iceberg. What we saw was a beautiful performance. What we didn't see was the mountain of work beneath it. So when Amanda Holden hit that golden buzzer, it wasn't just a big TV moment. That wasn't just confetti for a pretty song. That was years of invisible struggle suddenly being seen. That was someone finally saying, "We hear you, we see you, you matter." Can you even imagine what that feels like? To be told no so many times, and then suddenly hear the loudest yes of your life? Phew. That wasn't just a victory for Sydnie. That was a victory for every artist who's ever questioned if they were good enough. For every person who's worked tirelessly in the dark, hoping that one day someone might notice. And through all of it, through the shaky hands, the empty bank accounts, the nights of questioning everything, Max was there. Just quietly, consistently, lovingly there. The guy deserves his flowers too, you know? Because while Sydnie was the one on stage, belting her heart out, Max was behind the scenes holding her up, keeping the dream alive when she felt like letting it go. And isn't that what real love is? Being there when the lights are off and the audience has gone home? Sydnie Christmas got her golden buzzer, but behind that shine, there was a whole story of grit, love, and resilience. And Max Rizzo? He wasn't just watching it unfold. He helped build that moment, one loving, supportive, unwavering step at a time. The controversy and the comeback. Sydnie's golden buzzer moment had all the ingredients of something straight out of a movie. The lights, the tears, the shocked expression, and of course, that slow-motion confetti drop. But just when everyone thought it was going to be smooth sailing into the finals, boom! Social media came in like a wrecking ball, and not in the fun, Miley Cyrus way. So here's what went down. Right after her performance aired, people started digging, like really digging. Within hours, the timeline was flooded with folks shouting, "Hold on a second, is this girl really an underdog?" And you know how the internet doesn't play when they think something's fishy. Before you could say golden buzzer, Sydnie was being accused of being a plant. Yep, a plant. As in someone who was strategically placed on the show by producers to make it look like a genuine discovery, when in reality she already had a foot in the professional world. Now, was she a seasoned performer? Well, yes. She had done some impressive work in the theater scene. People were pulling receipts left and right. One tweet even dragged out her entire resume, like it was Exhibit A in a courtroom. Someone went, "She's done Starlight Express in Germany, Lazarus in London, and even played Rizzo in Greece. And we're calling this a newcomer?" Oof. And listen, things got even messier when Sydney ended up performing last in the finale. You know how being the closing act kind of gives you that extra boost? Yeah, people weren't having it. Suddenly, the plant whispers turned into full-blown conspiracy theories about the competition being rigged. Some were convinced the whole thing was set up to crown her the winner from the start. Like, what happened to just enjoying the talent for what it is? Why does everything have to be a scandal? But here's the twist. Not everyone was buying into the negativity. Simon Cowell, the king of judging himself, was actually super supportive. He didn't even hesitate when asked who he thought would win. He straight up said, "I think it's Sydney, yeah." That's a big deal, considering how rare it is for Simon to go all in on someone like that before the winner is even announced. During the final, he tried to cool things down by saying none of the acts were professionals, probably hoping to squash the drama. But let's be real, that statement kind of backfired. People were like, wait, none of them? Then what do you call someone who's done multiple stage productions across Europe? It added more fuel to the fire instead of putting it out. Still, despite all the noise and finger-pointing, Sydney won. In fact, Sydney got super real about it in interviews after the show. She called the experience soul-destroying, which, can you imagine? To finally get your big break, only to have your character questioned by total strangers online? She said she was completely new to that kind of attention, and that the rumors about the show being fixed were flat out untrue. She literally said, "Everything has been genuine, and I've said my truth, so saying it's not is questioning me." That part hit hard because it wasn't just about the show anymore. It became personal. She even admitted that the criticism made her feel really crappy. And can you blame her? It's hard enough putting yourself out there, but to do it on national TV, go viral, and then watch people tear you apart online? That's next-level pressure. But Sydney didn't let it break her. No. Instead, she set some emotional boundaries and said, "There's nothing I can do to change their minds, so I've had to separate myself." That takes strength, right? Knowing when to mentally step back instead of letting it eat away at you. And then, because she's not one to stay quiet, she took to social media to clap back just a little. Nothing nasty, just a firm reminder that she's not alone. Her message? "You don't know me or the fierce backbone I have. You cannot touch us." And she made sure to shout out her support system too, saying it was because of her amazing friends, family, and fans that she was standing tall through it all. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.